Good afternoon, Zachariah Jackson, BASA News. Well, I'm here in New York. I believe that this is Harlem. Is this Harlem?
It's the Royal Court of Harlem.
The Royal Court of Harlem.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You would think that all the black coverage that I do, I should know Harlem, and I really don't. I'm still a stranger here and everything. I'm so delighted and so happy to be here with Queen Mother Delois Blakely,
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The Harlem Street Nun. We're going to talk about that another time, but at this point of challenge, we're going to talk about her journey as a nun, going into the convent at 16 years old,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and coming from the state of Florida, coming all the way up to the big New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about her journey and her work in Africa. Can you introduce yourself to the people?
Yes, I'm Queen Mother Dr. Delois Blakely. I'm the Community Mayor of Harlem and the Ambassador of Goodwill to Mother Africa. And been at the United Nations going on 55 years as a humanitarian.
Okay, so you were there back in the 60s.
Yes, at the UN in the late 60s.
Late 60s,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Queen Mother, your visit to Goree Island Goree Island, from what I understood from the 70s, was slave ports where they shipped the slaves to the Caribbean, South America, and Americas. Is that correct?
Yes, very much so it is. Yes. Mm-hmm.
When did they, do you recall when they actually turned it into like a museum, or did the people actually recognize that this was that island or whatever, and do people inhabit that place?
Well, they live on the island
They live on
of Goree Island.
Okay.
And it is truly the spirit of our ancestors, where the slave house, where we left the island of the door of no return.
Yes.
We have returned now.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us that are returning home,
Mm-hmm.
I believe we have a right to that island, which it is the island of our ancestors. So over the last almost 30 years ago, I
Mm-hmm.
went to that island.
Mm-hmm.
And I am working on the island to this day. I at least go to Goree Island, making that sojourn once every year, sometime twice a year, that I go to Goree Island.
Okay.
In the beginning of the year and toward the middle of the year, Juneteenth.
Sure.
So Juneteenth, when President Joe Biden declared Juneteenth as a national holiday
Yes.
to African descendants, we did it at Goree Island
Okay.
through the United Nations.
Oh, wow.
So it became international, proclaimed by African descendants at the United Nations for Juneteenth, Goree Island.
Well, let me ask you this right here. At one point, the Goree Islands was used as a transfer station for us. Is that correct? Well, we came there, and they put us in holding patterns in the Goree Island, and then we went into the ships and coming out the doors of no return. Was people living on that island then? Was it inhabited?
They've been living on the island as enslaved people on that
Oh, they
island.
was enslaved.
Our ancestors.
Mhm.
That was their island. So we have a right to that island.
Okay.
That's why we are claiming or reclaiming the island as ours. Our ancestor
Okay.
were there.
Okay, but
And from that island,
Mhm.
they use it as a slave port,
Sure.
which they have the slave house, the door of no return.
Okay.
Now it's the door of return, because one of our ancestors
Mhm.
and one of our descendants
Sure.
from Brooklyn, New York, Victor Mooney,
Mhm.
the Goree Challenge, where he rowed his boat that he built himself from Brooklyn Bridge at the Brooklyn shipyard
Okay.
area in New York, and he rowed the boat, took a few years to do so, called the Goree Challenge, rowed his boat
Actually,
from
rolled
Goree Island to the Brooklyn Bridge. It has been accomplished. by
that he
a
wrote it
black man
from
born in the United States.
he wrote it
and
from
born in that
Brooklyn
area.
to Goree or Goree?
No, from Goree
Goree
Island
Island
to
to
the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh,
But he comes from Brooklyn.
oh, I
Come
haven't
out of
heard
Brooklyn.
nothing
Goree
about that.
Challenge.
And how long ago was that?
Not too long ago. You need to go out and find the energy
Yeah.
around it.
Well, I
Because
will.
he's still traveling the world.
Okay.
And this particular journey, where the first time we went out, the boat sank, so we got to know a captain of a ship that saved his life in international waters.
Yes.
And that's Captain Khan, okay, from Senegal. And so with his life being saved,
Sure.
then the United States government, since he come from the U.S., was able to monitor his journey all the way back, because you're dealing with different countries, and you have to have permission to cross into another territory that is not of the United States.
Okay.
But
And
they
he
monitored
actually,
his journey.
he actually rode with his.
He rode alone, a solo row. A black man did that.
Without a motor?
From Brooklyn. No, he didn't have a motor.
Wow,
No.
wow, he does.
And his first sinking of his first boat, they rescued him in international waters by Senegal.
Oh, okay.
And then as he continued to do what he had to do with his boat and moving and repairing it until the safety was brought about as he continued to row over a period of
All right,
time.
I'm definitely going to take time to look him up.
Yes, Goree Challenge.
Very challenge.
Victor Mooney is his name.
Well, let me ask you this right here on another challenge at Goree. How important do you think it is for Black Americans to go back to Goree Island, go to Goree Island? Should we go, or is it a mandatory? Is it a mandatory intellectual thing that we should do? Or?
I think if we're going home, you need to go to a place where you would be welcome because of your ancestors have left a place for you. So I'm saying that Goree is no more than about 7.5 hours, like going from New York to California.
Okay.
Somewhere else on the West Coast, from the East Coast. And you could do that from here to Goree Island. Within going to Senegal, probably 7.5 hours from New York, and then going right across the Atlantic Ocean, which is where our ancestors perished, many of them, in the transatlantic ocean of the slave trade.
Sure.
So with that journey, it behooves us to take that journey home of our ancestors. We don't have to create the journey. It's already there.
Okay.
So it is imperative, I think, for us to return home in the path of our ancestors, which I did over 30 years ago to Goree Island.
Well, let me ask you, if some Black Americans would say this here, that I have my ancestors here, and is it a crime that if they decide that they don't want to go, is it something that they lose by not going, and is it a great gain if they do go?
Well, then if they don't think they should not go, they won't go. But if they feel they need to go, then go do it.
Okay.
Okay, such as some of us felt we had to go home. As a little girl, I was considered very ugly. I was considered very Africa. From Tarzan and Jane, a movie that depict Africans as a child growing up, as a little girl growing up.
Sure.
So I was bullied very early as a little girl from Gatortown, from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And so when they said I'm an African, I did look like an African on television, with the broad nose,
Sure.
the thick lips, the high bone cheeks that I have, and the broad nose that I possess. I had the feature of an African.
Sure.
And so if this is what an African looks like, then I need to trace this African.
Well, let me,
I wanted to go home to find my people, because I'm not a child
Sure.
of the offspring of the slave master the slave master children from the big house do not look like me. They would consider me the field Negro child.
So, but let me ask you, when you were bullied and stuff, and called those names, who bullied you? Was it the people?
No, my classmates,
Your
the
black-
children
your black
that I grew up. That's all you had
Right, back
in the
those
deep
days.
South.
Yes, yeah.
You lived in segregation. You didn't
okay.
live with no white folks.
Okay. So your aggression, your abuse actually come from your own kind.
Your own people.
Your own people.
Because you must remember, they saw high yellow people,
Right.
which is the slave master
Sure.
children is beautiful than the children from the field Negroes who lived in the field of the United States.
Because
not in the big house.
Right.
Okay, I'm not a child of the big house. Just the way I look.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to think about it. And then you think of the schools of going to black colleges.
Sure.
The ones that would be accepted would be the grant colleges, or the grant land for black colleges. He was protecting his children, his offspring, with a black woman to educate them.
Sure.
So many of the children who went to your schools, black colleges, are children that are mostly high yellow looking children. And our race is very integrational.
Yeah, we
Just
have
in the
many,
race,
many
just
different
mixed
shades
color,
of people.
but
Right.
that's a mixed color for a reason.
Right.
It's an offspring of something that
Yes.
don't look like
Yeah.
your own.
Sure.
That would be the enslaved child,
Okay.
spring child of a spring master child.
Sure.
And that's real, like Queen Mother Moore. She hated her color. She
Yeah.
came from Louisiana.
Okay.
Her great-grandfather was a French man that did damage to her mother, raped her mother, and became the color she had. Queen Mother was a high yellow woman, and Queen Mother made it very clear what it was. She was
Well, you
not
know-
guessing. She always wanted to look like me.
Wow.
With nappy hair or curled tight hair. We call it a nappy hair. Queen Mother hair was straightened. Okay, and she couldn't plait her hair.
Well, I
She
like
couldn't braid her hair.
I like to tell a story that's more home for me. Is that my mother was very, very light, but my mother didn't hate herself. In fact, most of my love that I have for black people come from my mother. You know, and so.
As you can see, this is an African calling me, by the way,
Can you put this on
from
pause for me?
Nigeria. A Nigerian calling me. We were talking about Africans relating
Right.
to African descendants of the United States, which was in the midst of a conversation.
Yes.
And Sir Mandu, you called in the midst of Queen Mother interview.
Yeah, we're doing an interview right now.
Talking about Nigeria and talking about Africans' behavior toward African descendants.
Yes.
So that's our conversation at the moment, and we are in the midst of our conversation. So you may want to say hello, Sir Mandu, to a distinguished author, writer, producer. Please hold on for one moment.
Yes, how you doing, sir? I'm Zachariah.
I am blessed, and you are a manifestation, a representation of our ancestors and our beliefs, our culture, our civilization. And as a custodian, what you're doing now is planting the seed that will create prosperity for posterity. We thank you so much.
Well, I thank the Most High and the ancestors for bringing me along and teaching me the way. And I was talking to Queen Mother Moore Queen Mother Delois, I'm sorry,
Blakely, Queen Mother Blakely.
Queen Mother Blakely, about the behavior that we have against with each other, and somehow by telling the truth of our behavior, maybe we can one day get along and we could build something together. So we were basically having that discussion. So it was only the ancestors that had you to call in.
And A Nigerian calling in.
The Spirit will guide us, and we are the building blocks
Yes.
that will restore the dignity of our ancestors.
We
are on the right path.
Yes.
It might take a while. Success is not a finite end.
Yes.
It is a work in progress, and that work in progress is what I'm saying right now. And Queen Mother will lead us.
Yes.
And Queen Mother is just a living legend.
Yes.
And Queen Mother needs to be cloned.
Yes. Yes.
And our Nigerian brothers in Texas.
Oh, okay. So what?
So he understands us.
All over the world, the African representation in all colors, in all cultures, in all religions, we're all over the world. Mother Africa
Yes.
is the mother of many children.
Without a doubt, you know, and I would never try to play down our ancient beginning, but what we were actually talking about earlier before the interview is actually us getting along with each other on a common ground without one thinking they're over the other and the other over the other. So we have to sit down and figure out how to bridge that gap. And, you know, I think that right there is very important. I think that's almost like rocket science.
You are very correct, my brother. And Queen Mother will tell you in the next couple of months, we're taking a delegation to Nigeria to enable my African American brothers and sisters to own a piece of Africa besides their love, their good looks, and their color. The reason being is this: we're going there, and we're not really joking. With over 300 hectares of land available to be allocated to the participants that they can use for agriculture, they can use for mining for the next 35 years. It is only a piece of Papa's land. The land belongs to all of us, irrespective of where we are, in the Americas, in Australia, in South America, in Europe. Africans will always be Africans.
Well, I thank you for that, but I'm going to come to you from a different, not an underhand ball, but I'm throwing a straight ball to you that some would think in their mind, you know, when it comes to economics have distanced us from each other like the toad and the frog. I read years ago that at one time the toad and the frog was from the same pond, but irrigation separated them. So one goes through a tap hole and the other just born right on land, which is the toad. Now, I would like to know when that happened, how are we protected? And if we invest in Africa, how is our money protected?
All I can assure you right now is that the reason why we are fundamentally sedimenting to the bottom of the pyramid, the base of the pyramid, which is the land. Every world, under the heavens, on earth is underneath the ground, on top of the ground, or above the ground. So the ground is the common denominator.
Yes.
Now, all I can tell you, give you an example of what I am doing right now. I'm Igbo, I'm not Yoruba. Even in Africa or even in Nigeria, people are divided by things.
Sure, all over the world.
But to let you know that when you have the right components and the right people, it makes it easier to get things done. I have the right people, and I also have the right allocations.
Yes.
It's a global village, but it all starts locally. And I'm doing 15 hectares of land right now.
Yes.
Started in February, and I was not in Africa since January. I was there December, January.
Sure.
But since February, I'm cultivating on 15 hectares of land. And that land I'm going to harvest in the next 5 months. Even the corn has been harvested already in 2 or 3 months. So what I'm trying to tell you is there is a blueprint for success.
Yes.
There is a blueprint to protect the interest. There is a blueprint to really also understand when you own something, it's not really about, it doesn't matter where the wealth is, it is still yours. The Europeans that colonized Africa, did they take Africa with them back to Europe? No. They still maintained their wealth.
Yes, I understand that, but my beloved.
When you start thinking,
Yes.
when you start thinking of bringing the wealth back to where?
But my beloved brother, and I honor and salute you for all the work that you do. But again, as we have traveled and been distant from each other in different things, there's different gears, like the 10-speed have different gears. And if you remember one of our great plays here, Raising in the Sun, that when that money was given, you know, and Leroy, I believe it was, disappeared. So we want to know, and this is just you know, I'm coming from real, you know, I'm not coming, you know, in no superstition, is how is we protected economically on the world stage for the investments that we make? Because our money is our life journey. I love the motherland.
Everything starts with the contract, and that contract protects interests internationally.
Okay.
So which means, yes, and...
You understand where I'm coming from? Yes, yes, okay.
Everything I'm telling you right now is
Ask
right,
him, can
including the allocation of the land.
Sir Mandu,
Yes,
can you invite him to join you at another time?
Yes,
Because
we will.
now we just want to finish this interview, but we just want to bring you in.
Yes, yes, we will do
I will
that.
definitely do that. I'm getting ready to get on the Zoom
Okay.
call now with my group in the next
Okay.
10 minutes. And I thank you for your time.
Okay,
And,
God bless you.
Queen Mother will share our
Yes,
contacts.
all right. Bless you.
Blessings.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Peace and love as long as it's predicated on
Yes,
equal rights and
yes.
justice.
Oh, yes, it is. Blessings upon you.
Yeah.
Blessings.
Okay, in the midst of an interview. This was wonderful. Nigeria came
Yeah,
through.
it came right on through
The
there.
largest group of Africans on the
Yes,
continent.
yes, yes.
He said, Oshe.
Oshe, Ashe, Ashe, oh. Ashe, oh.
And Abani Ghani too, Abani Ghani.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And so the idea is where we were at was that the people, I'm telling you about my mother, that my mother was very fair-skinned.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned more about black history from my mother than I did my father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your father was afraid to talk about it. That's a given.
Yeah,
A black man can't be talking about no
well,
slave master experience. And maybe the reason why your mother was able to talk to you about it, because your mother was not considered a black person, a Negro. She was not from the field. She was light-skinned. She came from the big house.
well,
She came from the big house almost white. And like Queen Mother made it clear that a lot of things she could not do because of the color of her skin. And when she went to Africa with me, they called her an Nzungo. And I'm sure they would have called your mother an Nzungo too. That she was a white woman, meaning you're a white woman. Queen Mother cried.
My mother,
She
but
never
my mother
wanted-
have never. Yeah.
Queen Mother never wanted to be considered a white woman. But they told her what she looked like when she went to Africa.
When my mother described her relatives from Georgia, her father's side of the family is where the light come from. She said that she described them as, she said they were strange looking people. She said the reason why, because they were light skinned, but they had the big nose and the big lips.
Well, Queen Mother had that
You
too.
know,
But
but
Queen
she
Mother
hated-
would never be considered a black woman. And Queen Mother came from a mixed family out of France. And the Jews, after a while, declared her as one of them in the United States of America. Okay? The last big article was done on Queen Mother, was done by them. They wanted to capture her, okay, at the nursing home, and they did that. And it was in, what is that group that captured her? It's the feeder to many of your newspapers.
Okay.
What is it called in the media? Bigger than the New York Times. They're the feeder for many of your...
you're talking about, is it the MP? No.
Yeah, one of those big companies that feed news into all of them, whether
I think
it's
Helen
New
Thomas
York
worked
Times.
for them.
No, they all feed
African-
into that.
No.
Amsterdam?
No.
No.
It's a big feeder. We're talking about a national
IP,
feeder.
I think. Is it IP?
Just because I want to say it.
I can't
Another
think.
time we can think of it. But anyway, they're the feeder to all news outlets.
So,
AP.
Associated
Press.
Associated Press.
Associated Press. That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. Okay, so they had her all over the planet Earth. Go out, you see her story. Everywhere. If you get it into the AP will cover you everywhere. And they did that for her before she became an ancestor.
Okay. Yes, I heard about
They
it.
saw her as one of them.
Mhm.
That she had a Jewish heritage beyond the black heritage, also Jewish, because she came from New Iberia, Louisiana, that area, you know.
And back in that day, Louisiana and Mississippi was very hard states to come through.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
very hard. So let me ask
She
you,
was born in that part of the world.
in terms of your work with the Native Africans, and have you been received greatly by the Native Africans, if we could call them that?
Well, I call them the Africans of the continent.
Okay, African.
That's what I call
okay,
them.
Okay.
Africans of the continent, from the continent.
Yeah.
And going home, quite naturally, they're curious about who we are as a people.
Sure.
And why are we in the U.S.? We're not white people. Some of them were confused who we really are and why aren't we not in Africa?
So I guess.
How did we get lost? The Messiahs wanted to know only one thing from me in East Africa. Where have you been? You were lost. Now you have come home. And they said, you are Nai Wang Molel. That's my name from the Messiahs.
So let me ask
They
you.
named me Nai Wang, but I was a daughter who was lost. Okay? But now I'm home. They will never view me as an Mzungo. I'm no white woman. So why are you in a white land?
Well, so I guess they didn't have education to teach that that we came from Africa, that we were sold into slavery.
Yeah, but that part was not a part of their denomination
Education.
when they met with me.
Okay.
They trying to figure out what happened to me.
Well,
They were talking about the bigger question. Your Messiahs, you could get lost. Remember that they are your wilderness people. They're the ones who come from the land, and they could speak to a tiger, to a wolf, to a lion. They know how to walk in the wilderness. Everybody can't walk in the wilderness, but they can.
I guess from an African American point of view, if they could speak, and I'm going to say it like an African American, Black American would say it, that if they could speak to the lions and
they do all of
and
that.
all that,
They
I wonder
do all
why
of
they
that.
didn't speak to those lions and sick them on the slave catchers. I wonder,
Well, that part, I never asked them about that kind of information. But it was wonderful, as you said, when I returned home. They received me. They did not see me as a foreigner.
Okay.
They wanted to know where I'd been. And to never get lost again was the message to me as they clothed me, fed me, or returning home. That was the conversation they had with me.
Wow.
And one of the most beautiful photos of me where my hair is in little small plaits. They braided my hair for the ceremony. And my rubber tie shoes they put on my feet. And the goat meat, which they prepared for the feast for me. And it was a big gathering that
Did y'all
took
eat with
place.
your fingers there, or did you?
Yeah, you eat with your hand. Yes.
Everybody had the same bowl type thing, or?
Yes, they're Messiahs. Okay, they saw me as a Messiah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the group accepted me.
So
You have many tribal groups in Africa.
sure.
So they're kind of like tell you where you're from, where you really are from.
Okay.
Yeah, so Maasai land embraced me in Tanzania, in
That's
East
way
Africa.
down. That's way
which
down.
I was a Fulbright
Yeah,
scholar
yeah.
in the area. I
Because
was doing
Tanzania, you're Fulbright.
I was doing ethnographic research in the area. And also my spiritual African father was Julius Nyerere, head of state.
Okay.
So he gave me permission to go out and see all of Tanzania. I went to all of the region of the country.
Now Tanzania used to be was two countries coming together that formed Tanzania, isn't it?
Tanzania now is the two countries.
They formed together. They
Yes.
formed
Come
actually
with, yes.
Okay.
Zanzibar and Tanganyika. Now it's Tanzania.
Well, isn't Zanzibar that?
It's a part of Tanzania
Okay.
now. It's
What's the island
Zanzibar.
off of?
Zanzibar and Tanzania became one country.
One country, okay.
That's what
But
they
there's
are
an
now.
island off from that big island. What is that? Is that the big island off from Tanzania, off from can't think of that. I can't think of the name of that island right now.
Okay, yeah, when you think of it, you bring it to my attention.
So-
So those are the two countries. I went to study the head of state for
Mhm.
my doctorate degree at Columbia University.
Okay.
And as a Fulbrighter, I studied Julius Nyerere, the first president of Tanzania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he gave me permission to do it. It is a taboo to study a head of state while he's in office,
It is.
but he allowed me to do it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he gave special privilege. on that.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you felt at home there and things of that nature.
Very much so.
So-
Very much so. He was my African father.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when a man reach out and say you're his daughter, what more does a girl child need?
Mm-hmm.
Is a father. And with my father that gave me birth with my mother, in terms of his seed
Mm-hmm.
in Florida, my father says that beauty is from within.
Mm-hmm.
So I was his little princess at a very early age
You know that?
of being bullied. It was like, don't pay that no mind.
Yes.
Beauty is greater within you
Yeah.
and not outside of you. Not
Well,
what
well, you
look
know,
like.
it's yeah, a lot of our abuse come from right there at home, meaning that people just like us, that, you know, if they're a little, you know, at that time, everybody was trying to escape something. And so if you look like a black person, you know, they would, you know, sometimes deem you African, you know, you're from Africa.
Well, they did based on Tarzan and Jane, the movies
Yeah.
that we grew up on.
Sure.
You know, in our home of those who had television.
Television, yes.
So that's when you learn about Tarzan and Jane
Or,
in the jungle.
Mhm.
That's
Or
where you
my
learn
mother
it
talked
from.
about a book, Black Samba.
Mm-hmm.
Did
Well,
you
all
read
of that.
Okay.
All that has a lot to do with it on
Mhm.
us, yes.
So we
Anything that was negative was brought to our conscious. And they wanted us to also to look at Africans, unclean people. They didn't use soap, those whites that went to Africa,
Mhm.
and wanted to discourage us from going to Africa in the same university or school where you were going to school.
Sure.
What are you going to Africa for? They could go,
Mhm.
but they didn't want you to go.
Sure.
So those of us who took a risk and went home to study Africa,
Sure.
and which I did. I wanted to study self-reliance,
Mhm.
African traditional socialism, which Julius Nyerere was about that. Okay, understanding Africa through an elder who was a teacher, Mwalimu.
But then you became
received
a doorway.
we became with Julius Nyerere. You have the 7 principles that we worship.
Sure.
We call Kwanzaa, comes out of East Africa, comes out of Tanzania.
Okay.
Julius Nyerere middle name, which, what's his name, our brother, who did Kwanzaa.
Okay.
Okay, you know who I'm speaking of.
Karenga.
Karenga,
Yes, yes.
that's Julius Nyerere middle name.
Okay. Mhm.
That's where he got the name from.
Yes.
And if you didn't know, now you're all in the know.
Well,
Where
I
he
kind of
got his name from. Julius Karenga Nyerere. That's and the 7 principles come out of Swahili.
Okay.
Okay, some of us say Kiswahili,
Mhm.
but Swahili, the language.
And basically that's East Africa.
That's East Africa.
Yeah. When most of us as Black Americans, we basically come from West Africa. Is that correct?
You come from different places. You come
Okay.
from the East too.
Okay.
Yeah, where there's a waterway, that's where you come out of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that waterway would be the Indian Ocean. We come
Yes,
from the Atlantic
yes.
Ocean.
Wherever there's a
Mhm.
waterway, that's where they kidnapped us and
Okay.
stole us. Okay.
So do they have islands that's in East Africa that's set up basically like the Goree Island too?
I know very little research on that.
Mhm.
I stayed in the West Coast.
Okay.
Okay, started right there with Kuti Kinte, with Alex Haley.
Alexander, yes.
Yeah, which you really talking about Jufrey. Jufrey is in a place called the Gambia.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so that's where I did most of my research later on in life. It was
Mhm.
constantly accepted in those areas,
Mhm.
you know, in Jufrey, and then given the name, in fact, to Matu Kinte.
Mhm.
It's the name that was given to me.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
I have many names.
So many names.
Yes, I do.
Well, you deserve them, I imagine. That's why they honor you with it.
Yes,
And they
they
salute
gave
you.
me my name.
And you have actually become a gateway for those that's in Africa, that's born on a continent, that want to come here. Is that correct?
Well, a gateway is that if they want to come,
Yes.
they have a right to come here
Yes.
as well to the
And
United
you've looked
States
after them
coast.
and
We
things
look
of that
at.
nature.
Well, I have done a lot of that.
Yes.
Yes, at the United Nations
Mhm.
and in the Royal Court of Harlem here in New York.
Mhm.
Many of them live amongst us in
Yeah.
Harlem.
Mhm.
Go to 116th Street. You see their businesses. You see where
Set up,
they
yeah.
landed. In the 80s,
Sure.
and a large group of them came to Harlem.
Mhm.
And you had people like Belosi Harvey from New Jersey was involved with us here in Harlem,
Okay.
and other leaders. Our brother from Jersey, who was our congressman, okay, and his son just passed away.
Oh, you talking about Payne.
Yeah, Donald
Donald
Payne.
Payne,
Donald
yes.
Payne was an Africanist,
Mhm.
you know, very conscious of Africa.
Yes, yes.
And he worked with us. He worked with Queen Mother Moore. He worked with me. He worked with others
Mhm.
that was Pan-African in
Yeah.
spirit.
Mhm.
So you had that going on in the Congress. And a few of them changed their name in the Congress as well.
As well.
Their
Well, you know,
names.
I think that,
The African
you know, the
names.
question that like I asked the young man that we were just talking on the phone is this right here, is that,
Yeah, he's one of our elders.
One of the
Yes,
elders.
Yes.
and that as we, you know, as we evolve into understanding that, you know, there's no little you without a big me or whatever, you know, there are no eyes and no big me's, that in terms of Black American or African American, some call us, in terms of dealing in business and stuff, how do we protect ourselves, you know, and things of that nature. And I think that that's what a lot of us are in the States, you know, are thinking about, you know, how do I protect myself? How do I protect myself economically? You know, can I invest if I have it in Ghana, or can I invest in Nigeria? Can I invest, you know, is it a full goal or, you know, or whatever?
Well, I think you have to watch what you're doing if you're talking about investment. And that's with anyone,
Yeah.
not just with Africans.
No, but it's
Wherever you want to do your investing at,
yes, but
you
the
have
thing,
to be able to read the dotted lines.
yes.
And you have to understand the crossing of the T's when you do investments.
But when you,
So-
Queen Mother, if I
Mhm.
beg your pardon, that if you dealing internationally,
Yeah, that
you
is
know,
international.
right? Oh, okay. If I'm dealing
Africa is international.
yes, yes. So
Yeah.
how I think that we need to come up with a course on how will I deal? How do
Right.
I protect myself internationally? I know how
Right.
to protect myself in the States.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
but if I'm dealing international, if I'm dealing with Germany, if I'm
Yeah.
dealing with Russia,
Yeah.
how do I protect my investment, and what protect my investment?
Well, you have
if
mission.
there's a coup, will I
Right.
lose my investment? or
Well,
whatever?
but I'm saying those are the questions you ask when before you invest.
Okay.
With those who know and give you the right information before you invest in any country. And sometimes it's a risk
Mhm.
that anyone take in investing, don't care where you
That's
invest
true.
at.
That's true.
Even if you're in the United States,
Yeah.
people lose their investment
That's
every
true.
day
That's true.
amongst themselves. So you have to have someone who has the skills and ability. And you could start with what they call the embassies. Embassies are in Washington,
There you go.
D.C.
Yes.
So you go to that embassy
Mhm.
of the country where you want to go.
Yes. Yes.
Whether
yes.
that's in Tanzania, whether that's in Uganda, whether that's in
Nigeria,
wherever, South
Mhm.
Africa,
Mhm.
you go to their embassy
Right.
in Washington, D.C. that
Okay.
governs.
Okay.
And then they have the council.
Right.
Then you have the mission, the desk
Mhm.
of each country
Mhm.
at the U.S. State Department.
Mhm.
So they can give you guidance too.
Yeah, yes, yes. Now that's very,
Plunge
very,
before
that's
you
very,
plunge
very good
outside of the
information.
country.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
not just
yes.
go outside of the country, but you need to have some knowledge of information before you go outside to invest.
Dr. Queen Mother, do you consider yourself an educator?
Well, I went to school for education, yeah, but I believe in self-taught too,
Mhm.
of your innate gifts and abilities, and also based on your experiences in life.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, let me ask
But
you.
I did go to schools
Yes,
in my
okay.
lifetime.
Well, let me ask you this right here. As you've toured Africa and been to the various countries, have you ever taken a look at any of their textbooks?
I have looked at their textbooks, but you have to remember which one you're looking at. If you're talking about the UK, because you must remember,
I mean, UK.
the UK is London.
No, I said Africa. I'm talking about.
Yes, but I'm saying about the education system.
Okay.
Who taught them?
Okay.
Who brought the books into their neighborhood or in their schools or built schools for them?
Okay.
That would be many coming out of the UK.
UK. Okay.
And that's why many of them, certain parts of Africa, go to the UK to continue their education.
Okay.
So you
So
have
these
to
books are
look at
basically
all of the
right, okay.
colonialism
That's
involvement with
Okay.
Africa, but from the primitive or from the tradition way of learning and ideology. That's why I went to Julius Nyerere. Mwalimu was a master teacher, and that's why they kept the language Swahili
Sure.
as the official language.
Okay.
And most of the countries in Southern Africa and East Africa speak one language now, and it is Swahili.
Oh, okay.
That is the language that they
Okay.
use. It's not English,
Okay.
and it's not no other language.
And when the
right
kids go
now.
to school, they read.
They have to
Swahili.
master. They have to
Master.
master Swahili as a little child coming
Okay.
up. When they go to
Public school.
universities, then they have to learn how to master English
Oh,
or
okay.
some other language.
Okay.
Yeah, but they learn Swahili when they at the lower grades.
Okay.
Growing up with that, because that is the language that is spoken now in Southern and East Africa. That's one language
One
now.
language.
Yeah,
From-
they're arriving at one language.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of the tradition languages,
The
you're
tribal
still
languages.
dealing with tradition languages and tribalism in countries. But Julius Nyerere was able to foster one language, and that was Kiswahili or Swahili.